Chess lovers, Suren here, and in this video I want to share with you a magical attacking game played by the 8th world chess champion Mikhail Tal. His opponent is Georgian chess grandmaster Bukhuti Gurgenidze, and the game was played at 1968-69 USSR championship. In this game, the magician from Riga had white pieces and he opened up with e4, to which Gurgenidze responded with Caro-Kann defense c6, d4, d5, knight c3 and b5. A strange looking move which is named after Gurgenidze and is known as Gurgenidze Counterattack. By the way, in here, the line starting with g6 is also named after Gurgenidze and is known as Gurgenidze system, but in our game we have this strange looking pawn push b5. Here is what Mikhail Tal writes about this move in his book The Life and Games of Mikhail Tal. It should be said that the Georgian master adopted the Caro-Kann defense in this tournament from the very start. This was a rather clever idea, because the opening had never previously been included in his repertoire. Starting with the games in the 3rd and 4th rounds against Vasyukov and Liberzon, Gurgenidze played the Caro-Kann continually. In both of the above-mentioned games, the pawn of attack occurred, and then at last Igor Zaitsev played knight c3 on move 3. To the great astonishment of the spectators, the players, and Gurgenidze's opponent, there followed this outwardly so paradoxical move b5. Zaitsev, after thinking for quite a long time, played e5, after which the position became blocked. Zaitsev succeeded in obtaining an advantage, but then, in analysis, it seems that Gurgenidze found an improvement for black. In particular, it is interesting that after e5, he suggests a5. On the day before the game, I was chatting with some Georgian masters, and they half-jokingly asked me, "What do you think of the move b5?" I answered completely honestly, "I think it's a horrible move." When in the game I played e4, I thought that Gurgenidze would believe me, but b5 followed nevertheless. After thinking for some 20 minutes over my 4th move, I came to the conclusion that to refute this continuation immediately was not possible, and therefore Tal answered with a3, stopping the b pawn's further advance. Although, on the other hand, as b5 was somewhat expectable for Tal, how could he spend 20 minutes thinking over a3? I have to tell you that e5 is also a great move, the move made by Zaitsev. Both are Angie's first choices, but in our game we have a3, d takes e4, knight takes e4, bishop f5, and bishop d3. An interesting move by Tal. He is making a pawn sacrifice, but black didn't accept it, instead went for an exchange on e4. If queen takes d4, then white can play queen f3, and knight e6, then knight e2. If here, then knight g3, and white is leading in development and has a nice compensation. Also, the weakened pawn structure on the queen side looks somewhat ugly. By the way, in here, after queen takes d4, Tal was actually planning to play knight f3, followed by queen e2. But in our game, after bishop d3, we have bishop takes e4, and after bishop takes e4, black developed his kingside knight with a tempo. Bishop d3. The other move over which Tal was thinking was bishop f3, but as the f3 square belongs to the kingside knight, Tal decided to move back his bishop on d3 and e6 by Gurgenidze. Of course, in here, accepting the pawn sacrifice is also playable, but black played e6. Here is how Tal explains his opponent's decision. "I made the move bishop d3 fairly calmly, since the Georgian master very much dislikes positions in which, for a minimal material advantage, he has to conduct a lengthy, painstaking and relatively cheerless defense. Knight f3 by Tal, bishop e7, queen e2. Still, Tal is not revealing his intentions. Queen e2 can be also accepted as a preparation for queenside castling, but after knight bd7 we have castling kingside by Tal. Yes, he decides not to put his king on the queen side, which could allow his opponent to sharpen the game by starting a dangerous queenside attack. That's why he castled kingside, but later we will see that queen e2 actually turns out to be a loss of tempo. Black castled kingside, rook e1, rook e8, knight e5, knight takes e5, d takes e5, knight d5, knight queen g4. We first saw queen e2 and then queen g4. Of course, white lost that precious time. a5. Black is proceeding with his pawn push on the queen side, and a beautiful pawn sacrifice by Tal, h4. If you won't accept the pawn sacrifice, then white intends to push it forward up to h6 squares, or can even play h5 and then bishop h6. In our game, black accepted the pawn sacrifice, but this allowed white to open up the h file, and now you will see how Tal will successfully make use of that fact. Bishop e7, king g2, freeing the first rank for the rook. g6, rook h1. Already at this point, white has a very dangerous threat. For example, if you make a move like b4, then white can go for bishop takes g6 sacrifice. If f takes g6, then queen takes e6 check, and yeah, this is going to be very dangerous for black. Or after bishop takes g6, if h takes g6, then this time queen h3 can be very unpleasant. You should give back your bishop. In our game, after rook h1, we see bishop f8, but this is a move which is a mistake. Instead, playing queen d7 and strengthening the pawn on e6 was better. But in our game, we have bishop f8, to which Tal answered with bishop g5. Tal is first developing his kingside bishop with a tempo, and then after queen c7, he pulled out a brilliant combination. If only black could guess white's next move, then in here, instead of playing queen c7, he would have gone for f5. If here, then knight takes f6. In this case, black can prolong his resistance, although the f5 is weakening black's kingside further. But in our game, we have queen c7, and as we have reached the critical position, you can pause the video and try to find Mikhail Tal's next move. Ready? With his last move, black attacked the pawn on e5, but who cares? Who cares about that pawn? In here, the magician from Riga went for a rook sacrifice on h7. Yes, it turns out that everything is ready for the final blow. Queen takes e5. Well, king takes h7 is losing on the spot. That's something which can allow white to win on the spot. That's why in our game, after rook takes h7, we have queen takes e5, and another marvelous move by Tal. Can you find his next move? Well, actually in here Tal was considering rook h1, but to rook h1, black has f5 move, and black is managing to neutralize white's attack successfully. That's why to queen takes e5, this time Tal captured the pawn on f7. This is majestic, guys, and the way white's rook is slicing through black's army on the 7th rank reminds me of Tal's game against Uwe Bonch. I have already covered that game. In that game, Tal had black pieces, and his rook was harassing white king while wandering on the 2nd rank. The link of that game will be in the comment section, but meanwhile, let's proceed with our game. So at this point already black decided to accept the rook sacrifice, but white has already munched 2 pawns, which has weakened black's kingside too much. There it goes, bishop takes g6, check. This time Tal is making a bishop sacrifice, but accepting it can allow white to win black queen. That's why to bishop takes g6 check, we have king g8, and there it goes, bishop takes e8. Bishop g7, of course, you can't recapture because of the discovered check, and again, you are losing your queen. That's why to bishop takes e8, black answered with bishop g7 and bishop d7, although Tal could capture the pawn on c6 as well. Knight c7, and we see bishop takes c6 only now. Rook f8, rook d1. This time the second rook wants to penetrate the 7th rank. Queen c5. We have 2 threats. That's why Tal neutralized them, played bishop f3. And after queen takes c2, there it goes, rook d7. Now bishop f4 can be a nice threat. That's why black played rook f7. and rook d8 check, rook f8, and bishop f6. Tal writes, I somehow could not deny myself the pleasure of making this pseudo-brilliant move. Black has only one reply. Queen h7 is that move, but here comes bishop e4. The way white pieces are harassing black army is simply fantastic, guys. Queen h6, well, if queen takes e4, then this is of course simple. Without much effort, white can finish up black. Yeah, if knight e8, then rook e7. It's over, guys. It's over. In our game, after bishop e4, we have queen h6 and bishop g5, after which black moved back his queen on h8. A miserable position for black, and after rook d7, Tal forced a resignation. Right now your knight is hanging, which is protecting the pawn on e6, and if you play a move like rook f7, then white can go for rook takes c7 move, which I really would have liked to see in the game, you know. It's a pity that Gurgenidze resigned that early. If rook takes c7, then queen takes e6 check. Yeah, the game is over. If here, then bishop g6, and if king f8, then queen d6. That's why after rook d7, finally Gurgenidze capitulated. A very impressive attacking game by the magician from Riga. I really liked that idea of sacrificing the pawn, opening up the h-file, and intruding inside opponent's camp. This is it, dear chess lovers. I hope that you also enjoyed this marvelous game. We'll be very grateful if you can share with your friends and spread this video. Let everyone know about this beauty, and meanwhile, let's solve a chess puzzle. Please take a look at this position and try to find the winning line for white. It's white to move, and I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Thanks for watching. Here are more suggestions for you. Feel free to check them out as well. I will see you in my next video. Take care.